And so there's been a lot of rain and winds and so forth. But I still, I'm still not wearing a jacket.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's so I envy that. So it's just unbelievable when we start to peel this onion of the New World Order, Janet, and you can see that it is coming to a head here, and I think they are going to continue. I mean, they just keep lying and putting all these. They're just playing the same Nazi playbook. I mean, it's like almost to the letter. And then you tell people, and you try to wake them up, and the sheep are like, "That'll never happen." Meanwhile, you don't need guns, you don't need assault weapons, you don't need, these magazines. It's free, and they're missing the whole point. That the next thing, they have doctors now. Did you hear this one? Doctors are going to have to report how many guns that you have, and then report to the government. That's what's part of this executive order he has, and it's insane. So what if you're on a psychotropic drug, like 1 out of 10 Americans? So 30 million Americans, whoever of those 30 million are on psychotropics, they're going to take your guns away. So they just continue to find ways and little loopholes to take guns away from people. That's what they're doing. I mean, that's just one little tiny aspect, and that tells you a very dangerous thing. Historically.
All right. Well, doctors are one of the very first professions that lost their soul when the government came calling.
T4, euthanasia. It's happening now. We touched on that. We talked about that privately. That was, the euthanasia against the old people. They get them to a certain point, they milk them, and then they drip them.
Well, yep, exactly. And one risks being labeled a lunatic, a conspiracy theorist, simply for telling the truth these days.
That's
and
right.
T4 was the first extermination program that was launched in Hitler's Germany, and it did not target the Jews or the gypsies or the homosexuals. It targeted the elderly and disabled. And what I'm really afraid of, is that all we are seeing is Nazi Germany redux.
It really is. Obamacare, it's an abomination. There literally are death panels. And Bill Gates, scum that he is, saying, "Oh, isn't it better that we put $200,000 and buy and get 26 teachers instead of, grandma getting a $200,000 operation?" I think that's what it was. Yeah. I mean, it's back to that same rhetoric from the same mind-controlling propaganda, Goebbels, propaganda.
So what they want, I think, is that they want, a certain type of human being on the planet, and that type of human being would not be disabled or elderly, and I strongly suspect that type of human being might not be in a number of the different races that we now have on this planet. And of course, the fact that all of this is being spearheaded by the United States, which is supposedly the beacon of freedom and democracy in the world, is just simply mind-bending.
Very hard to get through to the sheeple, because that is the truth, Janet, and it is mind-bending. And I still can't even, as much as I've researched and much as I'm certain about and know about, it still astounds me how people, and myself, I've only been aware for the last several years. I sort of started waking up in 2007. I mean, that's only a few years ago. I was one of these people that were believing that these terrorists were going to be blowing me up in New York and to worry about Al Qaeda. I was a sheep. So I can see it takes a big leap of faith to realize that you've been wrong about so many things, and that truth is hidden. It's occulted. It's kept away from the public eye, because they need to keep the lie alive. And that's the simple truth.
Because the truth is so
horrific.
heinous.
Horrific.
Exactly. That we would rise up and revolt.
Exactly.
So not only do they have to keep it sheltered from public view. They have to attack, label, demean, and in many cases destroy those who say, wait a second, the emperor has no clothes. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, the eugenics angle is there. I mean, they're putting all this stuff in the food, all these different, Monsanto is with the GMO, and you have all these preservatives just in the regular food supply, the vaccines, the fluoride in the water. It's unbelievable. And all of the drugs giving you more ailments and more things that need more drugs and cancer, and it gives you cancer. Take it, though, you know? It's okay.
Well, also, have you noticed, I mean, like what a rise there is in Alzheimer's? We have 30-year-old people now coming down with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, because of the fluoride in the water. Fluoride definitely as an aluminum byproduct, right? You know?
It's more than that. It's more than that.
It's more than that.
I'm sure. Well, okay. Years ago, and this is in my book that hopefully will be coming out in a few months. Years ago, I met a fellow out in Iowa City who had been a geneticist working for the military. And he had been researching mad cow and had come to some very disturbing conclusions as to the relationship between Alzheimer's and the mad cow. And he presented his findings to his superiors in the military and had been completely messed with. First thing they did was they said, well, we don't need you anymore, just like leave the military. So he left the military, then he was arrested for desertion. Then he was put into a psychiatric hosptal.
Oh, no. Another one of those.
Another one of those, right. So, but his findings, which are very disturbing, and we spent some time, quite a bit of time, in Iowa City talking together, and his findings basically, his conclusions were that that the powers that be had developed a sort of like ingestible form of mad cow that created Alzheimer's, and had leaked it into processed food. And to quote, his name was Morrison, this person I'm talking about. To quote him directly, he said that within 7 or 8 years we were all going to be contaminated with this, and he called it the planned obsolescence of the human race.
Oh my God.
So, yeah.
So putting it in processed foods?
Processed foods, right.
Oh my God.
So that was his understanding, and of course, you know, he was very strenuously attacked by the system and by the military. And
it's unbelievable. I mean, it really is just, you know, I mean, I'm telling you, Janet, sometimes it's so, every time you find something evil and horrible, and then you learn something worse, you know? I mean, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I knew they're poisoning us, but I mean, also by putting not just poison, but bioweapons, basically. It's a weapon.
Bioweapons.
A bioweapon in the food that gives you.
Those were his conclusions. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So.
You know. Talk about evil. Well, I mean, there's no end to the evil here.
I think it's very important because we do have this window now that the fit has not totally hit the shan yet, and I think it's extremely important that we use this window to basically do as much as we can to help each other, to spread truth, you know, to help out other people in trouble, like, you know, well, like Charlie Castle, all that we tried to do for Charlie Castle. Our rights, our liberties, our property, and I think there's a lot of focus right now in the independent media on, well, one of the focuses is of course on all of the downturn in the economy, and I think it's very significant that this is happening at the very time that we're losing all of our civil rights.
It's almost like a plan.
because really, yes, because
it is
people
a plan.
who have no assets, people who have no resources, I like that word, resources, have much fewer options. If people have money, you know, they generally often have more options. For example, they can get on a plane and leave, okay? They can do this, they can move, they can erect barricades. People with money have more options, generally speaking, than people without.
Right.
So what is happening is at the very time that we're losing all of our civil rights and liberties, we're also going into an economic quicksand, so to speak. And what we're seeing happening with all this mortgage fraud, what we're seeing happening with the economy itself, what we're seeing happening in guardianships, so they go in and grab all your property, and not only does this property grab that's going on in guardianships impact an elder person, but the entire next generation, which would stand to inherit, also basically becomes less viable because of it.
Well,
and I just
go ahead. No, I was going to just interject that you're right, because what's happening truly is the Communist Manifesto being put into place. You have a progressive tax system. You have a reduction of the property rights because people can't afford to buy property. That's one way of keeping people from having property. And you have all of these, again, state paying for people, getting people to be used to being dependent upon the government. It's happening. There's no doubt.
Right, and I wanted to say something about some of my personal experiences with this, because at this point in time, I left the country 4.5 years ago, and I have been heavily relying on my inheritance, which was left to me by my parents, unfortunately in trust, and the trustee at this point in time is the County of Riverside, and the County of Riverside is embezzling my money. I'm stating that without any fear of legal, shall we say, attack, because it is truthful and it is supported by the documentation. So they are stealing, they are robbing me blind, and that trust, which had enough money in it to last me my entire life, is now almost gone. And I have a current police report that I made. I basically didn't want to have to contact the police because I find that they will do nothing when it is a matter of the little guy versus the big guy. And so I have provided allegations of over $500,000 worth of misappropriation, which I can back up by fact. And the police are trying to tell me that embezzlement is a civil matter. Now, what's happening in a court? It's a civil matter. So I went and found it's Penal Code 503, which basically penal code, criminal code.
That's right.
Which talks about embezzlement as a crime. Then the officers are trying to say, well, the court approved it, so it's a civil matter. So as you've been seeing, because I've been copying you in on the emails, I go, so just say this explicitly. If the court approves it, it's no longer a crime, it's a civil matter. And you have seen yourself, if you have read those emails.
Yeah, it's like being murder somebody, it's a civil matter.
Well, I'm saying, let's say, for example,
the court.
If the judge approved a petition to blow my head off,
there you go.
Would my murder be a civil matter? And the contortions that Sergeant Nielsen is going to in his responses are actually funny. I mean, he's writing all around the issue, but he won't answer that question. Right. And finally, I sent him over another email today, saying, just laying it out. I need an answer to this. Is it a civil matter because the judge approved it? Will you answer me, please? Well, I haven't gotten an answer yet. I mean, he can't really, I made it so clear, and it's just, I need an answer. I said it 3 or 4 times. This is the question, stop dancing around it. Mm-hmm. So, what they're basically attempting to do, and actually in the matter of the $500,000 misappropriation, there's no way that you can say that a judge actually approved this, because it was not a legally noticed hearing. And as I put in the email, it was more like some attorneys and a retired judge sitting around a bar plotting a robbery. It was not a legally it was not illegal